So welcome everybody. Welcome to our workshop today. It's a cash flow forecast workshop and it's presented by me. Hi, I'm Tanya Christie from Fullstack Advisory. And hopefully today we'll take you through how to look at your cash flow, what's important, what's not important, and to what level of detail it's possible to go, and just kind of touch on the things that might be pain points for you. The question and answer section is open. Please post your questions as I'm going, and I'll answer them if relevant just during the webinar or during the workshop. And if not relevant while we're busy with something, I'll make some time to answer them at the end. And just disclaimer, it's not specific tax or legal advice, so be sure to look at your specific situation, go and have a chat with your specific advisors, whether it's Fullstack or somebody else. This is just intended to be general advice. A little bit about Fullstack. We're a next generation accounting firm. We look after some really exciting ventures, and we seek to basically change the way people see accountants, in short. And just housekeeping rules, everyone has been muted, Q&A section's open, please feel free to use it. And the webinar is being recorded and will be posted on our YouTube channel afterwards. So I'm going to stop sharing screen, and you're going to have to look at me for the rest of the time because we are going to have a little bit of a chat. I'd like to start by asking everybody if you have to sit down and think about your business and your cash flow situation. Think about the number one pain point that you have when it comes to cash flow. There are different reasons for having a cash flow. The most relevant reason, or the most prominent reason, is to make sure that you're not overspending, and for others, it's to make sure that you can buy something new, make changes, maybe hire someone. So think about what's the main reason. Why do you want a cash flow? And once you know in your own mind exactly why you want that cash flow, you have to build it so that you know that the outcome is the cash flow is going to serve that purpose at the end. There's no sense in building this really elaborate spreadsheet or a forecast or anything when it doesn't fit the purpose. You can't really do anything with it. It's not relevant for what you want to use it for. So start with the end. Start by thinking to yourself, what is it I want to see? And because we've got quite a few people here, and I can't really pick a specific industry, I do have a poll. So if you would mind just answering the poll with what is your industry, and we'll pick a winner. And then once we know who the winner is, I'll kind of do the webinar just around that. Most of the principles will apply to everybody, so it's something that can be used by basically everybody, but just for interest's sake, I'm going to try and focus on a specific area. So it looks like SaaS is the winner today, and a SaaS cash flow forecast can also apply to a lot of different industries. Anybody that basically sells anything, a SaaS can apply to the same thing. The only time that you would not really have or be able to use the same metrics that you use with the SaaS cash flow forecast would be for something like manufacturing. If you're a manufacturer, the SaaS model or roughly going the shortcut SaaS way isn't really going to fit your purpose. So I think we'll get started. If everybody has their Xero open, even if you don't, if you've got your accounting package open, then I'd like to encourage you to go to the equivalent of the cash summary. Now in Xero, you can find that under accounting reports, and then under financial reports, you can find the cash summary, and go ahead and export that one. Pick the date of last month. That's the easiest, and just export it to a Google Sheet. That's the quickest one. to export to Google Sheets. And that's going to start to be kind of your guiding light to show you historically what are the cash flow items that typically are being allocated within your business. Now, when you are trying to get the information in, I always like to say, what you get out of the system is just going to be as good as what you put into the system. So if what you've put into the system is inaccurate and it's something's marked as cash when it isn't actually cash, it's not going to be reliable. But for the most part, let's pretend everything is perfect, and we are now looking at sort of what the type of costs are that you could potentially see there. Now, remembering a cash flow forecast, the whole goal is to look at your cash. So you've got $1 million in the bank, and so you've got a few goals that you want to achieve with that. Is how long is this going to last me? What's my runway? How am I going to know when I need to next up my prices, or go for a fundraising, or potentially draw down on a loan? So when you are preparing your cash flow, you always start with what's in the bank. How much have I got in the bank? And that will then give you a rough idea of what you've got to spend. And I've got a spreadsheet here that I can share so that you can have a look at it. It's not going to look like yours, so I'm hoping that it won't confuse. But we will make it available for download afterwards. So what I'll do is I'll share my screen with the spreadsheet in it, just to give you an idea of usually what the elements are that you would include in a cash flow forecast. So these are the elements that you usually see. I'm sure everybody can see my screen. And this is just so this is a SaaS model, and the idea is that with SaaS you would go for users / subscriptions. That's kind of what your main focus would be, your main driver would be. And you can have a very complicated cash flow forecast if you have, say, you have a sheet where it's your inputs and you're driving all of your inputs from that. But that's only necessary when you have a really complicated situation. For most people, your situation is not complicated. There aren't a lot of moving parts like with manufacturing, where you've got a bill of goods and you're supposed to, or bill of materials, and that makes up an element that can be sold. But when it just comes to SaaS, it's fairly simple, and you can keep it really, really easy and easy to update then as well. So you'll most likely start with your growth rate. So what's your growth rate month to month? Here I've gone with 50%. So the users will grow. We estimate, we're very, very rosy. We estimate that the users will grow by 50% month by month. So each month you're going to have 50% more users than you had last month. And then another thing for platforms or subscribers is the actual active users. So if you have a consumption-based product, you would want to know what are the active users. And usually you get that percentage from looking at the historics. If you don't have historics, there are benchmarks out there where you can kind of get this information and see what the average is. We can also help you if you're stuck. But let's say, again, good outlook, we think that roughly 40% of our subscribers, or those who have signed up to the platform, roughly 40% of them are active. They're actual active users and paying. And then the average sale value, that is the subscription fee. So for us, we've got a really expensive product. It's $1,500 per month. And it's $1,500 per user per month. And then it's just as simple as taking the number of active users and multiplying that with the sale value. And just extrapolating that out, you can see by using month-to-month growth, how rosy that picture gets and how quickly that gets very rosy. So it's a really good outcome forecast. So if you want to build this, go ahead. You'll see how it changes if the average order value is, say, $100 compared to the $1,500. So that's quite a big difference to what we had before. And that's kind of the way that you can roughly, very roughly, because that's all that's needed when you're trying to establish what am I going to do, where am I going? You just say, what if I charged $199? What happens? Wow, okay, I doubled. Obviously, you would double because the price almost just did double, but it helps to see it in a linear fashion like this, where you can actually see the outcome at the end. Now, this is a 24-month projection, but just by extrapolating it, it can easily go for 5 years, 20 years, however long you want it to go. Then getting to the cost of sales for SaaS and e-commerce clients as well, the cost of acquisition is a really big part. So make sure to do some study, do some market study, or look at relevant competitors to see what your estimated cost of acquisition should be. So how much should it cost you to get that first dollar over the line? And then how long do you have to have that client? Let's say it costs you $400 to onboard a client, a new client. So if the fee that you're getting from the client is $199, you need to have them on board for at least 2 months before you actually start seeing a return. So that's when the customer actually breaks even. That doesn't include your overheads, doesn't include anything like that. It's just now this customer has paid for themselves. They've not onboarded themselves and paid basically for themselves. So anything after that is theoretically when you start making money, if that part is more than your overheads. So the rest of it, the rest of the money that you're spending. And in SaaS companies, usually you've got processing fees. So that's the big thing. The processing fees or the processing costs, that would be your Amazon cloud costs, if that's the sort of service that you deliver. For some, it can be as simple as my subscription is attached to another subscription. So you work out that percentage and it's just a percentage of revenue, as simple as that. And then always merchant fees. Unfortunately, it's the reality of life is the merchant fee, but do try and shop around. I know that it's very easy to go to the big names and say, I know this one, I'm going to use this one, we're not even going to try with anybody else. But shop around, look at those just starting out, because you're more likely to get a better rate, better customer support, and they will love you. They will be more personable with you. And so once you get your gross revenue percentage, it's important to understand that the gross revenue, or the profit after cost of goods, that is what you've got left over to pay for everything else. So from that, you need to work out a percentage of how much am I going to invest in, say, marketing? How much am I going to invest in rent? And you do the way that I like to do it is you write down everything that you can think of that the business would need, and you triage them. You give them importance. So if you've got 30 items, you go down the list and you go, how important is this? I need to rate this. Is this a 7 out of 30, or is it a 30 out of 30, meaning I don't really need it? So if it's a 1 out of 30, it's number one. It's the most important thing, non-negotiable. Then if you've got 4 number ones, if you get to 4 number ones, then you've got to triage those 4 against each other. And you go, of these 4 number 1 items that I need, which one of them is the most important one of them? And then that becomes number 1. And then the rest of the others have to be 2, 3, and 4. So you keep doing that by process of elimination until you get to from 1 to say 30, how many ever items you've got. This is my importance. And then you build your cash flow that way. You attribute the non-negotiables first. You go, these are non-negotiables. So in a SaaS company, you would have research and development, or maybe not research and development, but you would have contractors and developers that need to build the product. Then you would likely also need a sales team, and you would likely need a support team. So when you are looking at triaging, those are non-negotiable. You can't really do, unless you're the one physically building the product for free, you can't really do it without it. So it has to be in there, can't leave it out. And then whatever you're left over with at the end, that is overheads. So that can be used for marketing, and it can be used for acquisition. So potentially you might have some campaigns, you might print out some flyers, or strategically you might attract some partners that you're paying commission if they sign someone up. So just remember that when you are divvying out your cash, if you think about it in a practical sense, think of it as a cake, and you have to feed from your cake. You have to feed the most important things first. And whatever's left over, you can share that between the rest of the crowd. And don't forget to save some money as well. You don't have to spend every dollar. It's up to you how much you want to save. Most startups, if you're in the startup world, you can't really save. Everything is just reinvested back into the company, which is fine. But do try and get into the habit to put away some money for a rainy day, because that money that you're putting away for a rainy day might just extend your life of your company by 3 months, and those 3 months might just be exactly what you need to get it over the line to get your first capital raise, for example. So try and put money away, out of sight, out of mind, especially if you've done a large raise and it feels like you've got a lot of money, feels like you've raised $10 million, we can take over the world, we've got all this money, but the cake is only this big. It might be $10 million, but the cake is still the cake. And if you give too much of a cake to someone, you can't go to them and take their cake back and go, oh, I actually meant to give the cake to that person. And if it's a really important resource that you forgot to feed, then it could mean, no, too bad, so sad, everything's over and done with. So, sorry, there's one thing that I don't have in here. I don't know why I don't have it in here, because it is the most important thing, and that is saving for tax. So this is only relevant once you start making money, obviously, but putting money aside to pay tax should be right at the top of your list, especially when you're making a profit. So if you're in a profit position, which your profit and loss will tell you, or in this instance, even though it's not technically exactly what your profit and loss would look like, it's close enough. So once you start going into profits, that's when you go, not all of this money is mine anymore. And it's a little bit tricky because of the tax laws. Well, it's not that tricky, but because of tax laws, if you've suffered a loss, so here you've suffered a loss, the total loss is $194,000. You get to claim those losses against future profits before you actually start paying tax. So once you hit the point of no return, where you've got 194.2, so roughly around this year, month 16, that's when you've eaten up your losses for tax purpose, and now you've got to start paying tax. Had you put money away when you started making a profit here, let's say you put away 20%, 25%, which is the company tax rate, but let's say you're conservative, we're taking into consideration the fact that you have all these previous losses, and we're only putting away 20%. When you get to this portion where you have to start actively provisioning for putting tax away, you're not putting the tax, you're not trying to play catch up with the historic tax and the tax of the year to come. So a tricky thing that people don't really realize is once you start making money and you let the ATO know that you're making money, if you make a profit, then when that bill becomes due, the ATO is going to start asking you for the next year's bill as well, the year that you're actually physically still in the year and hasn't ended yet. It's called income tax installments, and it's basically provisional tax that you're paying for the year end that you're still experiencing. And the reason they do that is because they don't want you to spend the money and at the end of the year go, oh, I thought it was my money, I spent it. So it's going to catch up, and just putting away the money from the start, not touching it. And then when you get to the end, so when it's time to calculate your actual tax profit and see how much tax you need to put away, then that is the time when you go, I've got this extra working capital that I can now reinvest in the business. I'm not worried about the ATO coming after me. And an easy way to do that, it's really as simple as just inserting a line and going. You can be more fancy. I'll probably make the one that we share a little bit more fancy, but if the balance above the line is greater than 0, then just take away 25%. So this 25% is what you need to put into a savings account or squirrel away. It's not your money, it's the ATO's money. So just keep it aside. And the other thing that I forgot to mention is GST. Now, GST can make your cash flow forecast extremely, extremely difficult, but it doesn't have to. All you need to keep in mind is if your assumptions and if your figures are all inclusive of GST. So when you're budgeting for the GST inclusive amount, the timing might be out. So the timing of the cash flow might be out, but you're fine. You've captured GST as it comes in and it goes out. It's been captured through your cash flow. Then when it's time to submit your BAS, if you've got a refund that's due to you, so let's say you had 110,000 worth of sales, then when you are 10,000 of that will be GST, and you've accounted for that as money coming in. So I've just had 110,000 coming in. That's fantastic. And then when you look at your expenses, you go, oh, I've only had 5,000 worth of expenses, so I owe worth of GST on the expenses. So I technically owe the ATO an additional $5,000. But because you've captured everything with GST inclusive, GST exclusive, it's already taken into account with just within your, say, profit and loss or your marginal profit. So if you are in a profit position, then that will be taken care of by this savings percentage. But if you're in a loss position, it's a completely different kettle of fish. And with that, I highly suggest just putting away the GST on revenue. Squirrel it away. If you have certain big ticket items that you know for a fact, you have certain big ticket items where you do get your GST, you get to claim your GST back, provide for those. So what you would do for cash flow purposes is you would basically say 3 months after, quarter is 3 months, about a month after the quarter ends, I'm either going to have a cash inflow or a cash outflow, which is going to be my GST that needs to physically go to the ATO, and only take into consideration the GST on revenue and the GST on the big ticket expense items that you know. If you don't have any big ticket expense items and it's things like office expenses and little bits and bobs, just ignore it completely for cash flow purposes and just squirrel away the 10% on revenue. And that's also quite simple to do. If you wanted to work that out, it is a matter of just hopping in there, dividing that by 11, and that will give you your GST, the GST figure. So that's the amount that's not your money. That's the ATO's money. I hope I did the calculation correct. But that's not your money. That's the ATO's money for GST. So this is the GST line. And if you did have some big ticket items, then you could potentially just include those in your calculation. So what we'll do is we'll say those are cash outflows as well. And then your cumulative cash balance is basically cash flow Oh, I'm doing plus because I've already done a minus there. And so this should be your cash balance, your available cash balance. Now, the idea with having it color coded, it's just conditional formatting, is so that you can see when you start getting low on funds. You can see when your funds start kind of getting fairly low. I think I did that wrong now, sorry. Just fix that to put that through. You can see when your funds are starting to get low. And so this means by month 4, I either have to increase revenue, reduce expenses, or find cash somewhere else. I'm going to run out of it. I'm not going to have enough. And that is literally how simple it is. So if you are someone who's just starting a business, let's say you're just starting a business and you want to know, how much do I need to get? How much would it cost me to get this thing going? This is it. So you calculate the cash flow, and then if we take up the 100,000 starting, you go, I probably need about 6 months to get this thing going. It's going to take me about 6 months before I can start earning any revenue. You take out all the revenue because you have none, so you have no users, and this is how much I need. If I want to do 6 months, it's going to take me 6 months. So if these are all the costs, then I need 168,000 investment to get this thing up and running. And it is as simple as that. Then you either go cap raising, or yes, I will be sharing the spreadsheet after the webinar. There will probably be another one that will also make available. That's a little bit more complicated than this one for those who want to delve in that deep. But yes, we'll be sharing the spreadsheet after the webinar. It will be available for download. And then with regards to the cash balance at the end, that's kind of where you would go when you're looking at your cash balance at the end of any given period. You need to take into consideration that anything can happen at any moment, and your revenue could stop. And rule of thumb is most businesses, you need about 6 weeks of working capital. And it's different for every business. So it's really, really, really hard to make it general. But you need about 6 weeks. I usually suggest 3 months, have 3 months worth of working capital. If no revenue comes in, you've got at least that sitting one side. And then I'll just stop sharing, so we're not going to use this one anymore. And then if you've got your 6 weeks worth of working capital, that would put you in a really good position to be able to, should the business come to an end, whether or not that's no more customers or there's an event that happens, you can legally cover your employees and usually their leave, because your employees shouldn't have that much leave outstanding. That more than 2 weeks, usually you wouldn't want them to have that much leave liability. It's too much of a liability. So yeah, if that is kind of what you're working on, is getting that cash flow ready and trying to understand exactly where it is, I've got a few ground rules that I'd like to share with you, that I'd like you to keep in mind. And then I think I am going to give an opportunity to ask questions to anybody who would like to ask some detailed questions, whether or not it's relating to your business or just general. You're free to do it anonymously. But some of the ground rules I'd like to just give you is, remember timing. Timing is important, but it's not the end of the world. So I discuss with a lot of clients where things are paid, say, in the next month. And when you are doing your cash flow forecasting, it is so difficult to predict when this payment needs to be made or is going to be made, that you spend more time trying to make sure that you have provided for that $7 subscription than the cash flow impact it is going to have. Obviously, if it's $100,000 expense, that's it. And if that is significant for your business, then that's something where if you need to build up 3 months worth of cash flow, like if you have to bank 3 months worth of cash surplus before you can actually afford to have this expense, then timing is extremely important. But for the smaller things, go general, keep it as generic as possible, and try and be, I know it's really difficult, but try and be high level. Try and go as high level as you possibly can. And it's about the cash in the bank. So when you are looking at your cash flow report, just do a sniff test or a reasonability test and go, does this specific transaction impact anything of my cash? Does it have a money impact? Do I have to pay someone this, or does someone have to pay me this? If the answer is no, then it shouldn't be in there and you should be taking it out. Except for the provision of tax, because the timing of that is different. It only leaves your bank. But if you take my advice and create a different bank account to squirrel it away, that will mean that cash is physically moving out of your available cash. So you'd be able to kind of tie it back to the physical balance in your bank. I'm just having a quick look at the questions to see if there are any that want to be answered live. Not right now. So I'll continue with a little bit of the ground rules. When you are looking at your cash flow, once you've created this cash flow, let's say you've done a 12-month cash flow, remember to check the reality of your actuals against it very regularly. Things increase and decrease quite significantly, and looking at your P&L, everything might feel the same. But if you look at your cash flow, you'll realize, actually, I'm under or overestimating for X, Y, Z. If your cash flow forecast, and if you compare your cash flow forecast, if you go and you compare that to the actual expenses, income and expenses that went through your account, and there is a significant difference, it is worth revisiting your cash flow and seeing what went wrong. Did I overspend? So am I overspending? So I usually say do it monthly. Monthly should be fine, but did I overspend? Was I too enthusiastic about how much revenue we're going to get? And when you are looking at your revenue side of things, it's also important to remember, not so much for a SaaS business, because it is kind of subscription and it is recurring revenue, but it is important to remember what your payment terms are. So don't count your chickens before they've hatched. What you would want to do is, if your payment terms are 30 days, if it's 14 days, it doesn't really matter, because that's within a monthly period and you're doing a monthly forecast. If you were doing a weekly forecast, different kettle of fish. But because you're doing a monthly forecast, if your payment terms are less than 30 days, then don't worry too much about it. But if you've got longer payment date, or you know that you work with customers who are, say, government, where you know for a fact it takes 60 to 90 days to get paid, remember to build that into your assumptions to say, when should I expect to receive this money? So I'm signing them up, or I'm providing the service, or I'm selling the thing to them in month 1, but I'm only going to be paid in month 3. Now, for e-commerce business, for example, or for businesses who sell to retailers, so if you sell wholesale to retailers, that means that you need to front load your inventory. So you need to have enough cash available now to sell the money to buy the inventory, and then you need to sell it. So technically it's being sold, but you're only going to get cash for that if, depending on what your agreements are, say most of it is 50% on delivery and the others say 30 days. Some of it is 50% on order, 50% on delivery. But even if it is 50% on delivery, that doesn't mean you physically get paid on delivery. It would mean that on delivery, unless it's cash on delivery, but it's kind of not the way the world works anymore. So once they, sorry, I'm just having a look here. Sounds good. Feel free to invite on LinkedIn, we can connect there. Sorry, I lost my train of thought. But if you have, I forgot, oh man, lost my train of thought. Sorry. The goods. So if you've delivered the goods and it's cash on delivery, that means that it's not cash on delivery, it's just the payment terms are on delivery. It means it will go through their approval system on delivery. So once you've delivered it, it goes, yep, we received it. Their receiving section goes, yeah, we've received it. And then it goes through their accounts payable process, which can take a month, 6 weeks, whatever the requirements are. So make sure that you know, and you would know this, you would be the best person to know this. You can hire someone else to do this on your behalf, someone like us, to assist you to build a cash flow. But remember that only you know your product or your service like you do. It's your baby, it's your pride and joy. And there are tips and hints and things that other people can give you, but you need to speak up. You need to say, this is what I want, this is what I think, because it's very easy to be bullied, or not bullied, it's mean. It's very easy to be shuffled into a certain direction because, oh, I've done 50 cash flow forecasts and this is how all of them go. This is what we regularly see, but none of those 50 people have been you. So they're not you. They don't work like you. They don't think like you. Their product isn't 100% similar to yours. So you need to take ownership of that and go, this is me, and download as much information as you possibly can. And for me, the more you know how to do in your business and the more you understand the numbers, you don't have to physically do it yourself, but you have to do it at least once to understand the basis of it all, to understand where things are coming from. And reading the reports at the end, going through the reports, and you don't necessarily have to understand what the different things mean. You don't have to understand that there are different treatments for tax and depreciation, and you don't really have to understand that. But you need to know, when you're looking at your reports, what should be raising a red flag and going, this is not right. I need to look deeper into this. I think we have a webinar coming up about reading your financial reports. So if that's something that you're interested in, have a look at. It should be advertised everywhere pretty soon. But just make sure that you also understand that businesses are not just income and expenses. There are also capital items. So you might have capital expenses that you don't necessarily see in your P&L, which is why I like using the cash flow forecast or the cash report, cash summary, whatever it's called. I like using that a little bit more because it actually shows the true movement of things in the business, and that you can run a cash P&L, profit and loss, but just remembering then again that profit and loss is just that, it's profit and loss. So if anything went to the balance sheet, even though the cash left your bank and something was capitalized, it went to the balance sheet, you're not seeing that movement in your cash P&L. It's not in there, which is the whole reason why you have a cash flow summary, to kind of show you what happened to my money, where did my money go. And I think with that, I will give about 5 more minutes for people to ask questions that they might want answered. And if we don't have any, then I shall let you enjoy the rest of your afternoon. So if you've got any questions, pop them into the Q&A section. Feel free to reach out to me as well. I'll put our contact details up so that you can get hold of us once I get back to that screen, because I am just winning at life. There we go. So feel free to connect with us on all the different platforms. Keep an eye on all of our different channels and subscribe to our newsletter if you'd like. We answer quite a few questions via the newsletter, and we are introducing a news section where we are answering oh, great. Sounds good. So I do have one question I can answer live. And the question is, what are some of the top items that provide an immediate cash flow increase or a significant boost in cash flow, aka cut subscriptions? So an immediate cash flow increase, the most prominent one would probably be increasing your price. That's the easiest way to get more money by doing the exact same thing, is you increase your price. So when you are looking at your cash flow forecast and you see it's costing me too much to run the business, don't necessarily always go to cost cutting. Go to cost cutting when you have so cost cutting is reducing certain things. I always recommend, I'm glad you mentioned cutting subscriptions, because I always say to clients at every single month, just look at your subscriptions, and my SaaS clients are going to hate me for this because it's kind of not conductive to their business model. But the whole nature of SaaS is set and forget. So people sign up, if it's a small enough number, let's say it's $9, you don't really notice that $9. And if a lot of people do the $9, then their business model works. But for you as a business, because as a business, I want to look after my clients as well from the business point of view, review your subscriptions and look at the redundant ones and see if you can cancel them. Usually the head of department is the best person to sit and go through with, because it's very rare that the executives actually know what the subscriptions do, what they're being used for. So if you've got a development department, for example, you would sit down with the head developer and go, are we using this, and this? If the answer is yes, then the next step would be look at the users. Do we need, if it's per seat pricing, do we need this many seats? Do we need 20,000 20 seats? Do we need all 20 people on it? Or are we only actively using 4? So then you can reduce the subscription to 4. Another thing that could immediately boost your increase is government grants. There are so many government grants out there. This is not a business, a change in business. It's not a strategic angle, and you can't really rely on it. But there are many grants out there, and I speak to a lot of founders who aren't aware what great grants are actually available, and there are many. So try as far as you possibly can to have a look and see what kind of grants might be available to your business. And with that, I think what I might do is say goodbye. Thank you everybody for joining, and I hope some of that was helpful. And if you would like to have a chat about what we do here at Fullstack, if you're not already a client, if you'd like to have a chat about what we do here at Fullstack, feel free to reach out and we'd be happy to help you take over the world. Thanks everyone. See ya.